Today's Christmas, so we're going to be doing the December 24th and 25th, and I hope that you follow along and remember Christ and his names throughout Christmas. For December 24th, there are two names, and the first name can be found in the scripture Isaiah chapter 9 verse 6. We've already read this scripture, but it's a different name from the time that we did it last time. And it says, "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulders, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace." Now, there are quite a few names in that one, but I'm going to remind you again, it is not the name from last time. So the name for that scripture was Prince of Peace. The second scripture for December 24th is found in the scripture Doctrine and Covenants chapter 76 verse 23, and it says, "For we saw him even on the right hand of God, and we heard the voice bearing records that he is the only begotten of the Father." That one had only one name, so it might have been easy for you to find out, to figure out what the name was, but the name for that scripture was the only begotten of the Father. For December 25th, there are three names. The first name can be found in the scripture Revelations chapter 22 verse 16, and that scripture says, "I, Jesus, have sent mine angel to testify unto you these things in the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David, and the bright and morning star." Now you can try and pause the video and figure out what the name for that scripture was, but the name for that scripture was Bright and Morning Star. Now the next name can be found in the scripture 1 Timothy chapter 6 verse 15. And it says, "Which in his times he shall shew who is blessed and only potentate, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords." Now the scripture, the name for that scripture was, there was two names, but the name for that scripture was King of Kings. Now the next name comes in the scripture Revelation chapter 19 verse 16, but it has the same two names as the scripture from last time, but I'll read it anyway. "And he has on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords." Now, it's the same two names that were in the last scripture. There was King of Kings, and the one for this time is Lord of Lords. There is one extra name that you can find. You can search it up. It's pretty easy to find. You just search up Eldorado Band, October 20th, 2020, BYU, Hawaii. I found it, and there's this talk, and he gives a list of a few names. The names for this one, it says, I pored over the scriptures identifying the Lord and his names and titles, all the while focusing on their significance in my life and the life of all God's children. Today, in my personal study, I continue to do so. I have found more than 200 names so far. He is Creator of all things, Finisher of faith, God of Israel, Jehovah, King of kings, and resurrection of the life. If you keep reading on, he gives more names throughout his talk. One of the most important names that we have not talked about throughout the entire Advent calendar is the name that he says in his scripture, name above all names. I hope you enjoyed and that you were able to guess some of the names for December 24th and December 25th. I hope that you remember Christ throughout Christmas and that he is the reason that Christmas is a thing.